Hello, hello
Hey
from America.
y'all, we're so happy you're here.
Welcome to the MindShift Experiment. I am one of your hosts, Amanda Knox.
And I am your other host, Carter Brown.
We could not be more thrilled to be here today. We have really thought about how to unpack everything now that you've gotten a brief glimpse into who we are and how we started. And we figured, we dive into the whole concept of why we're here. Can you actually change your reality? Can you actually shift your reality? And the experiment that led us here, I talked about it a tiny bit on the very first episode, but now it's time to dive into the details and figure out how we got here and where we are today. But let's start with what made us choose the name we chose. Carter and I went back and forth on this for a while, and we kept finding stuff that we were like, oh my gosh, this is really good. Like, we were both so intentional about the name. And the reason we're sparked by this is, this morning we both talked about what inspired the name on our social medias, and we were like, this is a great conversation and intro and leeway into episode 2 on how this came to be. And it was something to where we knew it needed to have the impact that we were intending. And what we both were texting each other so many different ideas and thoughts. I think at one point, like, mine was always something around the mind, I feel like, but I might be, I need to go back through our text, but you said you did that.
I
Or what did
did.
they?
So you were all about the mind code and you liked the idea of having experiment involved. And I kept on being so gravitated towards the soul shift. And, we kind of just like played it back and forth. And I was like, what about the mind shift? And we were like, that is it. And then I was like, wait, are there other podcasts called that? Of course, there were a few. So we were like, okay, wait, what do we call it now? So we landed on the mind shift. And then I looked up and I saw that there were a few other podcasts called that.
What? We're like,
Clearly, some
whoa.
other people are on.
Research because they all just like use the same name, and you're looking at them, you're like, I mean, a lot of these people haven't even posted in years, but still we need to make this our own. And that's where the experiment came into play.
Because
I
that's
mean,
exactly what we're trying to get y'all to do is just try the experiment. Just see if it works for yourself.
well, and then, knowing that it stemmed from an experiment I did and didn't tell anybody I was doing, because I was like, I don't know. And I think that's what I should get into, because that is what sets the tone for everything else that ends up becoming this like ripple effect, and it goes back to, I know I mentioned this on episode 1, so I'll keep these parts brief, but it's the specifics that I didn't touch on that changed the game. And because while I could say, oh yeah, your belief system creates your reality, well, prove it. And I remember feeling that way. I was at an all-time low, and I was like, I was watching quantum leap videos on TikTok and manifestation videos. And I'm like, the thing is you're telling me manifestation is real and I can quantum leap, but no one is showing me how to freaking do it. And I started, being like, is this too woo woo for me? I mean, I got my feet in both these different things that I'm trying to figure out, between God and finding God and this and that and the other. And I'm like, what do I do? And so that is when I hit that low moment in life where I knew I didn't have a choice. I got on my knees and I prayed, but I also was like, give me a sign, okay? Like, something. I'm begging on my knees. And it was later that day or the next day that I got in the shower, and I have a very toxic, guilty pleasure of, I scroll TikTok only when I'm getting ready or in the shower. I don't have time to do it any other time. But I do it because, and I'm not here to watch dances or makeup tutorials. I love to learn stuff. I love to go down rabbit holes. I love to learn stuff. And I happen to come across the first freaking TikTok that I see is she starts with, everybody's telling you how to manifest some quantum leap, but no one's showing you how to do it. And I was like,
What?
Girl, you got my full attention, whatever it is. Here's what she did. And this is what changed it all for me. She said, everything has a frequency, which again, we touched on the last episode. And she was like, money is here. Okay. Money is a neutral frequency. It's not low. It's not high. It is neutral. And the problem is most people's frequency around money or in general, their mindset, okay, this will all tie in, is right below it. Now, if you're somebody with a scarcity mindset or a broke mindset, a victim mentality, it gets lower and lower and lower. I mean, and that's the science behind it in general. Now, she was like, if you can figure out how to vibrate at the frequency of money or higher, it will literally, naturally come to you because God didn't design things for you to struggle. Like that's the way we look at things is how society's been brainwashed us to look at things, right? And I was like, okay, that's great and all, but I don't know how to do that. Because again, like I'm like, give me the answers. And then she literally says, I know you're probably saying, okay, well, I don't know how to do that. I'm like, get out of my freaking head. When I tell you this freaked me out, I got out of the shower and I was like, Chris, we have got to do this because she was talking to me. But um, he said, here's what you're going to start doing and implementing. And this is what's going to change your life. And guess what? I was desperate. I had nothing to lose. So I was like, fuck it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this experiment. She said, every single time. She said, stop checking your bank account before you go to the grocery store. Stop obsessively checking over your bank account. She goes, I want you to know that you have that money that you need in your account. And she goes, and every time you swipe your card, I want you to say, thank God I'm rich. Thank God for my abundance. Thank God for my money. You know, started doing this. Now, mind you, I started this experiment with $36 in my bank account. Okay. I'm going to say that right now. It's crazy because I did this. The next day, I had to take my dog to the vet. And we all know that's expensive. And at this moment, our credit cards are maxed and all of this. And you know what? I just was like, I know I have the money. And, you know, Chris is telling me it's not, I said, stop. I said, we'll be okay. Um, I swiped my card and it went through. And I didn't check the bank. I didn't worry about it. As I was swiping this massive, it was 500 something dollars. And I didn't know where it was going to come from. I knew I definitely probably did not have it in that moment. And I was just like, whatever, I'm going to swipe my card and it's going to be fine. And it was fine. And I still know, like, I didn't look at the bank account. I don't know where it came from. We didn't overdraft, nothing. I do not know. I just started implementing this thought process with everything. And then Chris and I sat down and talked to him that I was doing this experiment and I needed him to get on board. And he looked at me and he was like, well, that's cute and all. You can say that, but that doesn't mean it's actually real or that we actually have the money. I said, well, what's worse, us screwing ourselves more or staying in the same spot or us getting out of it? Like, I said, we're on kind of a pendulum swing right now. Let's figure it out. I said, let's just dive into it. I said, let's stop stressing about money. Let's just know we have it. And every single time we view a bill, we do these things, we're just going to be 100% confident and be grateful. Find gratitude in absolutely every single moment, which I know will tie in the gratitude thing. Every single thing. And it's crazy because this happened and I mean, literally, this was all within a couple days span. And then a couple days later, I found my digital marketing stuff, which then really set us on a path that it's crazy because at the same time that happened, we were finally in a space where like money literally was just flowing to me. I was just like, what is happening from every aspect? I got a check from the couch that we bought for like a couple $1,000s. I ended up getting a commission off of it. And I don't even know how I got a commission off of it. When I tell you just like crazy stuff started happening. So you know, initially when that happened, you're just like, okay, clearly I'm on to something. I know I figured it out. I've really hacked this situation. And so that just kept spiraling. And at the same time, I still was believing it, but every time I watched myself sway in the belief system or try to get financially stingy, God would be like, mm-mm. And I'm going to show you why. My AC broke. Our septic, $5,000. Just like all of a sudden, I would get things thrown my way. And it was like, okay, what happens if I remove that? What happens if I remove all fear, all attachment to money, attachment to the outcome, attachment to anything like that? And I just know that I will now be in a constant flow state, an abundant state, and I'll never have to worry about money again. I've been in that state ever since and have not had a problem.
I'm speechless.
I mean, it is, that's the experiment I did. And, Chris thought I was absolutely delusional at first. He was like, there's no way, which is crazy because I've always been an entrepreneur, but never have I done something so extreme. And, being in that space, I was like, what do we have to lose? I said, at this point, our only backup plan is to sell our dream home. And you know what? I'm going to do everything to make sure that that doesn't happen. And obviously, I had to do it legally. And was I asking the internet, how do I make money fast legally? Not with an OnlyFans? Yes. Because, I just was like, we bought this house reliant on an income that I had. And, I honestly think it has nothing to do with where I was. I was on the wrong path and I was being redirected. When you look back at that, that's all that it was. Because stepping back, I took the scariest risk of a paycheck that I knew I was going to get, that I had been getting, but even though it had been getting lower and I could see the red flags and the signs that it was no longer meant for me, and I felt that call and push, it felt too comfortable. And, I hit a point within that where I said, I'm doing the same thing year after year. I'm going through the same things. Every October, I'd experience the same thing. Every December, it all felt familiar in a way that I didn't want. And I hit a point where I said, I don't want to feel this way next year. I don't want to look back. By this point, I think it was June or July. And I said, I don't want to look back next June and be so mad at myself that I didn't change something. I don't want to look back next June and be like, I'm still in the same position I was in last June. And I knew the only way to get myself out of that is to do it. Like if you have that pulling on your soul, of that calling, that constant nudge to redirect, even though it seems scary, nothing great comes from your comfort zone. Nothing great comes without, doing it with absolute fear and uncertainty, because that's what all of this took was faith. It all boils down to all this took was faith.
Mhm.
And it wasn't out of I needed money for greed. There's a negative connotation around making a lot of money. And here's the thing, society has trained you to think it's greedy because people do greedy things, but you cannot put that on everybody, because some people use money as the vehicle and vessel to live out their purpose, to make an impact, to be the best human that they possibly can be. And can you do that without money? Absolutely. But here's the thing, not everybody's calling is the same. We all have that innate desire within us for a reason, and it's all going to be different. That's our specific soul driven purpose.
Well, if you stifled that, you would be living your most inauthentic self and life would go haywire for you. I truly believe that. So kudos to you and kudos to Chris for, agreeing because I'm trying to get Tyler on that. And he's like, am I just supposed to throw away everything I've learned in the last 2 years? And I'm like,
Yeah. Basically. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but like truly, like if you stifled that desire that you had, it would affect your marriage. It would affect how you were a parent. It would affect everything. And you being your most authentic self has brought you to this point. Go ahead.
Well, here's what's crazy about that is every time I knew I should pivot to do something new and I didn't, something bad would come into play to try to redirect me. And I watch that now that I am self aware in how things work. I can step back as an unbiased observer for a lot of people's lives and situations that are playing out in their lives and go, you're in a loop. Here's why you're stuck in this loop. And unless you listen, you will remain in the loop. It's the loop of, have you talked to somebody and they're like, I don't know why this keeps happening to me.
Because you're not
And it's
changing.
unfortunate. It's a loop. Yes, you can change for a few days, but it's a completely different energetic alignment to what you genuinely want. And that's not a few days, that's a practice. That is something that you commit to and you dedicate a large majority of your effort and your, I mean, everything to, and becoming that, to remove yourself from that. Otherwise, those things, they continue to happen, and it will, you'll stay on the loop and you'll go year after year. Why does this keep happening to me? Well, why does this keep happening to me? Remove yourself from the loop.
I mean, and like it goes back to me for 2 years straight, starting every morning at 4:30 on my knees. That didn't me getting to the point where I'm at didn't just happen because I did that, a couple times a week or that, I did it a few times a month. Like, no, it became my new habit and became me. And I felt weird not starting my day like that. And truly, that is what brought me to this mindset is that it, a lot of people, and this is not the episode to talk about religion, but when people talk about, they're like, I gave my life to Jesus and everything changed. Well, that didn't happen for me. I grew up in a very religious household. I accepted Jesus into my heart when I was 4 or 5 years old, very young, and nothing supernatural happened. But what happened when I started to have a mindset of gratitude and no longer realizing that what caused me to have this supernatural experience to actually change my mind was to have this mindset of gratitude. I was doing so well at work in an industry that I had never done before. I've never done sales before, I never did logistics, but I was doing so well. And I was full of so much gratitude, and I had to give it somewhere. And it just coincided that with how work worked, they release new leads for sales at 5 a.m. every day. So I was like, I'm going to wake up at 4:30. I'm going to get ready. And mind you, I was 244 pounds when this was happening. Okay. I was at my heaviest. I felt my most unlovable, um, very, very low at my point, but I had so much gratitude and I had to give it somewhere. And I decided to give it to God, and truly that changed everything for me. And to think back on who I was when I first started praying that prayer, I was at a really low frequency. I was still operating in a victim mindset. Woe is me. I have no friends. I'm sober. I'm 200 and almost 50 pounds. I only have my parents and my sisters that are my friends. And I just started this new job. And I was not attracting the right things. However, I was moving in the right direction that was supposed to happen for my life. Like, clearly, I was supposed to meet my husband at this job, who I ended up praying for every single day for those 2 years and was in that same room. It just still blows my mind. The frequency that I was at when I started doing those prayers was so low. However, by talking about my gratitude and bringing it to the forefront and releasing that and having so much appreciativeness for this world and where my life was heading, my frequency started to rise. And I'm not even realizing it. I'm like, wait, I want to start working out more. I want to lose this weight. I want to put myself back out there. I want to get back on the dating apps. I want to find some friends. And slowly but surely, I truly, completely transformed my life by solely having this mindset of gratitude. When I think back about who I was when I was in addiction and, I think back, oh my gosh, I had no friends. I wasn't happy. Well, that's because I was doing all of the things that keep us at a low frequency,
Mhm.
lying, not being authentic, stealing, doing things that I know will bring me down, but I don't care. And those are the types of people that I was attracting into my circle, other
Yeah.
people operating at that frequency. And I remember telling my boss one time, I was like, I'm so lonely. I have no friends. And he's like, Carter, I think at some point everyone feels this way.
Mm.
And it's because everyone feels that low at some point.
Yeah.
Everyone is operating at such a low frequency, and something pulls them out of it. You don't realize it back when it happens unless you are paying attention to it, but everyone is at that point. And when my boss told me that, I was like, everyone feels that way? It just like it shook me. I was like, well, how do you get out of this? And this is why we wanted to create this podcast is like so many people are like how they see people going from being sad, depressed, and then one way they're completely different. What happens? For me, it was adapting this mindset of gratitude and not even realizing I was doing an experiment. And Amanda, it was, I'm doing this experiment. I am begrudgingly going to be doing this. And
Yep.
she adapted her life to that. So here's two different ways of getting to the same point. And I want you to know that it can happen either way.
Right.
And that's the real blessing about it all.
And your path doesn't have to look like ours, right? Like, and I want to say this. I want everyone to come into this with such an open mind because immediately you're going to have people that are like, I don't align with this from multiple different aspects. But here's the thing, I challenge you if you come into this with an open mind and you really take what we're about to go into from all the levels and layers we're about to get into, I promise you we'll see the transformation because oh, there's so much more. And obviously we can only pack so much in a couple episodes. But that's why we're like, we have to do a podcast. This is layered, this is deep, this has so much depth to it. The guests that we have coming on will blow your minds. The experiences, the experiments they've done. This isn't something where we're just gonna get on and we're gonna chat about how amazing our lives are because of what we've been through and what we've overcame. It's showing you experiments, but hey, like here's how we are going to create this into a system or something that you can implement in your life to genuinely change your life. When we both decided to do this, our purpose led path made us realize that everything we are and we embody is about helping people change their lives, quite literally living their best life. I look at things and I'm like, you have a 1 in 400 trillionth chance of being born, and you're going to spend 9 hours a day scrolling a phone and not making a dime from it, while also complaining about your job, while also not being able to pay your bills because we're in some insane recession, while then entering every giveaway you can and just then being like, gosh, not to go off subject because this does tie in, but I just did a giveaway. And I have to tell you something that I saw that was really impactful for me. Um, I did a big giveaway. I partnered with a bunch of other influencers on social media. It was a massive, incredible, one of the best giveaways I've ever seen. And I I kind of used it as a social experiment to see how many people like would respond and how they'd act. So I would say out of the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of entries that we had, a large majority of people would explain, I never win anything, but I'm still sharing.
Well, you're never going to win anything when you say it like that.
And I responded to two people saying that. I said, no, you won't win this because you've already set it up that you're not
Declared
going to
it.
win this. I'm like, I said, this is actually what my podcast is going to be about. I was just like, let me give you a little snippet. Whether you think you can, whether you think you can't, you're right. You're right. You are literally right. It is the epitome of the Mondays. You wake up and you spill your coffee on yourself, or you wear a white shirt and you got something on it, or your egg dropped on the floor and you got to clean it up, or what, you forgot something, or your purse snagged, or your cart rolls back. Once you set that intention that, oh my gosh, it's going to be one of those Mondays, it will be. It's about intention. It's about aligning. You put that frequency out, you're quite literally creating that reality for yourself based off of your thoughts and your words. And a lot of people don't realize that, words are so impactful. Spelling, spelling, it
Mm.
creates everything. the things you speak about yourself, the things you say about yourself to others, to yourself, even if it's just in here.
Words are so powerful. When Tyler and I got married, we both said, we were like, no matter how angry we get at one another, we cannot say things that we know we can never take back. The ego, the enemy, Satan, whoever you want to call it, is going to take that and disrupt your peace at any moment possible. Like, there are a lot of things that I want to say in an argument, but I know that it would ruin my husband's mental peace. And saying something in the moment like that, A, isn't going to change anything. It ain't going to make me feel better. And it's just going to make everything worse.
Yeah.
And so we made that point. We're never, ever going to say things that we can never take back. And we never have. We have never gotten into a verbal argument where I think about what he said about me. Because here's the thing, we all think a million things. There's a million things that come across our mind. Oh, I'm clumsy. Oh, I'm fat. Oh, I'll never get this done. Overcome that in your head. All you have to do is say, no, I am beautiful. I am going to get everything done. I have all the time in the world to get everything done I want to. When you create that reality in your mind, that is what becomes your physical reality.
Yep.
If you tell yourself you have all the time in the world, you will have all the time in the world. But if you say, "Oh, I'm running late," or "I'm not going to be able to get this done," or "this traffic is going to cause me late." No, it's not. And I'll tell you what, there's an example. I read in a book recently about time, actually, about how we create time.
Mhm.
And time is actually an illusion. That's a whole other topic for
Oh,
itself. But this guy is this book. He's a life coach, and he's writing about one of his executives that he's coaching. And he's a high level executive on Wall Street, and he had just had this coaching session with his coach, and he was like, stop feeling rushed, stop feeling like you don't have enough time. When you have that urge to pick up your phone to see what time it is, don't. When you want to look at your wrist to see what time it is, don't, because time is what you make it. And
that is
he's
so
running
true.
he's running late to his meeting. Okay, he runs into the subway. It's so compacted. He can't even lift his arm to look at his wristwatch. But the whole time he's like, I have this meeting. Everyone's going to be waiting for me. I can't even lift my arms. Like, the subway's taking forever. And he goes, wait, I'm going to do what my coach just told me to do. I'm going to say, I have all the time in the world. I'm going to get there and the meeting hasn't started yet. I'm going to get there and it's going to be the perfect time. He resisted the urge to look at his clock or his watch the whole time. He got off the subway, didn't look at it once, walked to his building, went up to the meeting room. No one was in there. The meeting hadn't even started, yet it was past the time it should have started. So instead of raising his cortisol and freaking out about being late to this meeting, and it all worked out. Okay, had he looked at his watch, maybe that meeting would have started on time. Maybe it wouldn't have. But you know what? He remained at peace. He got to walk into work and not feel rushed. Time is what you make it. And reading that example totally has changed the way that I go about my day. I'm like, oh my gosh, this Pilates class is going to start, or this train has now come. What am I going to do? Da, da, da. I'm now like, you know what? I get to sit in my thoughts right now, or I get to talk to this person, and whatever it might be. I think of the gratitude of what's causing me to be late and be present in the moment. And then I actually show up to where I need to be, and I'm not even late.
You want to know what's so funny? That this literally happened to me this morning. So this is so wild because I usually leave my house at 9:20 for Pilates. I live far from Pilates. I have to drive to the only place like I said, we bought a homestead, okay? I have to leave my house at 9:20. Today, I wasn't even dressed at 9:20. I got dressed. Instead of stressing, I got dressed. I got in my car and realized I had to get gas. And I was like, you know what? I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter. Everybody's on spring break. If I'm late, like it literally doesn't matter. I didn't look at my clock. I didn't stress. I got a little bit of gas. I got like 100 miles of gas. Um, and then got there and still had like plenty of time to get there, get the reformer I wanted, go to the bathroom and sit down. And I was like, you know what? I never stressed myself out. I never did. there was like a brief moment where I was like, of course I'm behind the slowest person. Then I was like, nope, we're actually gonna not do that. And then I decided to talk on my stories because that was how I got myself out of that, to talk about this. And it is crazy how that worked. And now that I didn't really think much about it because I was just like, I'm not stressing myself out over freaking Pilates. Like, if they want to charge me $10 and I'm super late, you know what? I'll go to Target. Like, I was just like, okay,
Okay.
I mean, whatever. I didn't care. And then, of course, at Pilates, I was like, this is so hard. I wish I would have been too late. That when you remove that, of course I'm late, oh my God, of course I'm going to be behind the slowest people. I was stopped at every red light. But like, I didn't think anything of it. I just was like, well, cool. I mean, it's an excuse for me to go to Target. Like, that's okay.
Right.
I don't care.
Yeah.
And I just knew after what I was going to do. And so,
Well, it's so funny because after I read this in this book, I live by two train tracks and we've lived over here for almost 4 years. The first 3.5 years, I hardly ever got stuck behind the train. But as soon as I started focusing on not letting feeling rushed being a priority for my life, I am caught behind a train almost every day now. And I know that it is a lesson for me to adapt in what I'm trying to learn also in my own. The universe is working in conjunction with me. God
yeah.
is putting things into my path to help me further learn the lesson that I'm choosing to learn. So instead of getting upset, there was one time I missed Pilates. The train literally was going this fast.
You're like,
It was terrible. And I remember being like, "Oh my gosh." And I let it derail me. And then literally train derail. But 5 minutes goes by and I'm like, wow, the train is never going to go any faster. I might as well change my mindset about this because I'm making myself spiral right now. And it is 7 o'clock in the morning. Why am I going to start my day like this?
yeah.
And so many people start their days like that when they go into rush hour traffic and go to a job they hate. And oh, the interstate frequency and energy is terrible in the morning. Everyone is just like, I hate life, you know? And like, but you can choose to love life, you know? I always think about, we talked about this in the first episode about going to a job that you hate. There's a Smoothie King by me that has a drive through. We like going there because kids and car seats, we prefer a drive through. The workers there love their life. They love their life. They are so happy. They are so ecstatic to take my order. Hey, how are you? Yeah, I'll do that. And I leave every time and I'm like, they literally love their job and they make smoothies all day long. It is about your mindset. You can be doing anything and be happy in doing it.
Yeah.
And again, that just like put it so into perspective for me. And I always tell people when I'm out and about and it looks like they're loving their life and they're working, I'm like, hey, I want to let you know that your experience or my experience today was enriched by you because of how great your attitude is right now and how high of an energy you're emitting right now. I appreciate that. And I always tell people that. And that's another thing I want to challenge people. Give people compliments. You have no idea if one thing that you say to someone, they could hold on to that for a month.
And you have no idea what people are going through either. What lessons they're being
Yes.
thrown into, what loops they're stuck in, you know?
Yeah. Or like you tell someone, hey, your hair looks great. And 30 minutes before that, their coworker was like, your hair looks dumb today. But you know what? I just turned that around for someone. You just never know. So when those thoughts come across your mind, hey, that person looks really good in pink. I saw a girl in Costco. I go, hey, girl, you look really good in that. That took no effort for me, but it probably meant everything for her. And again, why words are so important. There's this duality of it. You can bring people up and you can bring people down.
Yeah. I mean, and that just depends on your frequency in general as well. I do that when I'm checking out. I always look at them and I go, I hope you have the best day ever. And they're just like, wow, thank you. I'm like, you're welcome. I hope you do. I mean, here's the thing, when we're living a life where the only thing certain is death, and like I talked about earlier, you have a 1 in 400 trillionth chance of even being born, and the next 40 seconds to the next 40 years are not guaranteed. Why would you not live your life that way. That's why I've never understood the concept of bullying or mean girls or that whole mindset around things, and people come to me all the time. They're like, "How do you deal with internet bullies?" And I said, "I don't. I don't deal with them because I don't have that, and I don't know whether I just don't attract it, but I won't, and would never give energy to those kind of things. Back in like 2020, when everybody thought they had a keyboard warrior voice, would I have to like block and delete some people? Yeah, but like to the point where I don't respond, I give it absolutely none of my energy because, when you have something like that, and I feel like this will all tie in together, but when you have something like that, my thought is if you're going to give somebody your energy, whether it be good or whether it be bad, you're giving them your energy. You're taking your energy away that can be used towards yourself and your family and love and whatever else you have going on. And you're giving it away to a stranger on the internet because their heart is hurting.
That just hit me. That hit me about the energy I'm taking away when I interact with things like that and
Mhm.
people like that.
And think about how you act. I mean, for me, if I'm in a situation where I'm dealing with something that isn't for my highest good, it makes me snappy and more reactive at the people I love that are just trying to get my attention. And that's what all things it's to steal it from us. You know, I'm going to get into a lesson that I learned because I feel like this all kind of coincides very nicely. I don't exactly see how, but I feel like the vision will plan out very well. But I just went through a wild year of learning some very impactful lessons that when I look back on, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful for these lessons, even though they were hard as hell in the moment. But, basically, it stems from a year ago, almost a year ago in August, which not almost, but a year ago in August, we started our pool build at our property. And I've worked for years to make this happen. Obviously got derailed. We almost had to sell our house. Thought, oh my God, the pool dream. Like, I just want to be able to keep my house. Everything spiraled into the reality that we have today. And when our pool build started, our pool builder decided because we live on property not to get a permit. And it ended up creating a ripple effect that I would have told you was a ripple effect from hell. Now, looking at it, I am so grateful. The way it played out and how it happened and the lessons we've learned because they'll affect us forever in a good way. But it all stemmed from one person's decision. And so I look at it now as this one soul decided to sign up to teach me one of the ultimate lessons I've ever learned. And through this ripple effect, it created horrible situations, animosity, and drama with our neighbors that we directly back up to. It was a whole thing. And, the more I talked about the drama, the more frustrated I stayed. I stayed in a state of anger for over a month and a half where I couldn't get out of it no matter how hard I tried, no matter how positive I looked at things. And it hit a place where even people were like, I see this bringing a part out of you that I've never seen before, and I want to check on you. And I was like, I'm fine. I've just never been through anything like this before. My reasoning for being angry and resentment was they're trying to take something away from my family that I've worked so hard to create. That's like trying to take food off my family's table for me. Like, how dare you? And then I had to step back and be like, so I fed into it. I started talking about it on social media. I started bringing it up. The more attention I gave it, guess what? The worse it got. And on every level, from the pool builder not getting the permit, created a ripple effect my effect that it felt like was from hell that created decking problems, just issue after issue from him, and then issue after issue from the state trying to screw us, or the county and the state, and then the neighbor. And then when that neighbor could no longer mess with us, the other neighbor started messing with this whole thing. It was like being in a hurricane. And it felt heavy and overwhelming. And here's the thing, I didn't know how to cope with it because I've never dealt with anything like that. So instead of coping with it how I should have, calm, cool, and collective, like my husband, I was a little unhinged. I'm a Gemini and, have a strong personality. And so I took it to social media, and the more attention I gave it, like I said, the worse stuff I just kept attracting. And so one day I woke up and I said, I did an experiment. What are the odds that I keep doing that? I woke up and I said, if I no longer give it if I suffocate it, if I put it out, like if I were to put what are those things you put over candles that are lit to make them go out?
Oh, a
Whatever.
snuffer, candle
Yes.
snuffer.
If I put that over this and I just suffocate it by giving it absolutely zero energy or attention, what's going to happen? And guess what? That's the day it went away. All of it. I released it. And then I was like, what if instead of releasing, I remove complete resentment and I hold love and space? Because I feel like anger and frustration on their end stems from a lack of love. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to have like this beautiful friendship, but I can love you from afar and hold space for you in my heart that I feel like you need. And I'm going to see how that makes me feel. Because at the end of the day, I was the one feeling this way that I didn't like who I was becoming and how I was feeling. And it was the most freeing, peaceful feeling I've ever experienced. And it brought so much peace into my life, and that's when I started diving into the ego and removing the ego, and that everything comes from love, and just the understanding from all religious texts and what those mean. And it just set me up on a really wild journey. And that has all happened, like, this ripple effect is recent. I mean, that, and then that's when I think we were like, oh my gosh, it's time to do this podcast. Like, everything, the lineup for everything is this way. But something, and again, I keep proving to myself my growth for things. I sat there, we've dealt with issues where our pool decking needed to be ripped up and redone 5 times. Now, we ended up buying like a very nice, what made one place in the world decking. Didn't do that on purpose, by the way. Had no idea what I was doing and had very little guidance. And it had to be ripped up and redone 5 times due to incompetence. And, I could have been like, let's go after him legally. Let's do this. Let's do that. I was so frustrated. And at the end of the day, you know, I had to check myself because I said, wow, well, me a year ago would be grateful to even be in this situation, like immensely grateful. And it's crazy because anytime I sit out on the pool deck and I look around, despite what's happened, I cry. I literally burst into tears with immense gratitude because looking at how everything has kind of come full circle and what we've been able to create, but also I'm so grateful for the lessons that I've learned and the people that have taught them to me. Where I could hold resentment, I could get legal involved, I could do things, I could be petty, I could be somebody I'm not.
Hmm.
And instead, I found um, ultimate peace, is what I found
Through loving thy neighbor.
through literally loving my neighbor. And well, I mean, it's human nature for that not to be an easy thing. When I drive by one of their houses, I'm like, well, I'm going to buy your house. um, that's what I want to do. But, at the end of the day, my heart hurts because somebody at that age being alone on a property like this, in order to have that kind of behavior, you have to be sad and you have to be
We
lonely.
well, you have to look at them as the inner child that they are. And if you look at them like that, it's a whole lot harder to be angry at them.
Yeah, that is so I actually haven't thought about that, I look at her as somebody who looks at her life, and I can say this with certainty because she's told me this before this all happened, that, she lost her husband and was a young widow and had a young daughter, and just like a ripple effect, like she got a bunch of money from, life insurance. He did very, very well. She had to sell her home. She moved out to the country. She had friends that she like helped financially that then never paid her back. And she just started building this resentment after resentment after resentment. Plus, she's, not from this country at all. And so she doesn't have family and support and things like that in that way. And so she found, I mean, I can see that she probably plays these stories over in her head. I'll never forget that when she found out the previous owners were selling this house, she didn't want to meet us. She was like, "How could you do that to me? I loved you. How could you sell to people I don't know and love yet?" Like, and from that moment, we tried so hard to have a relationship, but it was hard. It felt harder than it should have been. And when I started just realizing after this incident, I really just started understanding how she's living her life, and just was able to be like, "You know what? I need to hold space and love, and I'm going to do that from afar for my mental state and clearly yours because you want nothing to do with us for I don't actually know what reason." Um, but if I just know we can do everything we want to do, and we lead with love. And I don't think the ego is a bad thing. It's here as like a protection for us to kind of separate. I mean, the ego was originally created to separate us from animals, kind of thing. At least that's, if you do your research, that's what they say. But I think the ego is here to create a sense of self, and you can use it for good and you can use it for bad, but really that's up to you on what you do with it. You'll see some people that are egotistical, like name brands are their whole identity, and all they want is all the money to themselves, and they'll never ever try to do anything for other people. And that's where you see the pendulum swing of crash and burns and the divorces and the affairs and the things like that, where their lives look great, but they've created a pendulum swing of a ripple effect because it's not authentic to how they should be living. And I feel like that goes for anything. I mean, if you do things with the wrong intention, you know, the pendulum swing will eventually come back to get you. There's a really good book I love that actually goes into this, and it is a read that will go over 99% head. 99% heads. I had to think about that. It is called Stalking the Wild Pendulum, but it explains this in an actual, like, scientific and mathematical equation that you're like, okay, this makes sense on how this all works and doesn't work, and why some people you see them living lives their certain way, while others you see them living lives their certain way. It's that free will, if you will, which we've talked about that a lot too. That your free will and your ability to understand what free will genuinely means will create your heaven on earth or your hell on earth. But it's up.
Mhm.
I mean, it's always up to you.
I agree. I'm thinking about I just spaced ADD.
It's
Never
okay.
mind. It lost me. But no, that was so good. I'm glad where this is pivoted.
Yeah. I'm gonna.
Um, mhm. So I was just thinking about it's back to that book that I was reading about time, but it's called The Big Leap, and it's basically about ego and what he calls it as our upper limit problem. And everyone has a self-sabotage like meter within themselves. And God created a a meter within ourselves in which we are supposed to operate. And when you operate out of alignment with that, that is when self-sabotage happens. Is that when the divorce, when the car crashes, losing the home, like losing everything, that is when you're out of alignment with who you're supposed to be and the traits in which we are supposed to operate as humans. There are laws of this realm, of this matrix, of this
Yep.
simulation, world, globe, whatever you want to call it. There are laws of it. And if you operate out of alignment of who you're supposed to be, of your purpose, things will go wrong. You will get sick. You will start getting migraines. also mentioned in this book one time of this guy who's like, I started getting migraines every single day. I don't know why. And the guy's like, okay, well, let's figure out why. He gets transparent and vulnerable with his coach. He goes, well, I'm having mad passionate sex with my secretary every lunch during the week. And I am getting the migraine like 3 to 4 hours later. And the coach is like, that's your body literally telling you to stop doing that. You are operating out of alignment for yourself. It's your body literally telling you stop. And usually the gauge within our body is pain. Pain is what's going to get us or trigger us to get our
Yeah.
attention. The migraine was enough for him to want to stop doing his work, enough to make him talk to his coach about it. His coach is like, stop having the affair and tell your wife and move on. He stops the affair, tells his wife, the migraines stop immediately.
German New Age medicine.
Yes,
This
I
is it.
have. Is
German
this
New
an
Age
alignment?
medicine.
Oh,
Yes, you want to
really?
know what's so wild? Oh my gosh. Okay, I know this is such an ADHD moment, but this is perfect because if you have symptoms, anything, and I'm going to use something I have been going through. Oh my God, this is crazy. Hold on, I just have to read you this because this is so wild. So according to German New Age medicine, right? I asked it why I've been having I literally am so floored right now. I can't even talk. I asked
I have chills and I don't even know what's
so the
going on.
last year I've been having like scalp, like not dermatitis, not psoriasis, not dandruff, but like this white like flake, just like my scalp felt drier than usual. So anyways, my girlfriend was like, ask about German New Age medicine and see what it says. So I did, and it started diving into basically that all the things that I had gone through a year and a half prior were detoxing from my body. This was the final stage of the detox from my body. And it was loss of friendships. It was, I mean, identical. It was describing all these things. And then it asks you, I did this on ChatGPT and it asks you, like, do you want to work through this? Together we can dive in and figure out the root cause, but that's if you don't know the root cause. Once you realize what the root cause is, you acknowledge it and accept it, it goes away. And guess what? This was last week. I have not
Stop.
had any scalp issues.
How does your scalp just stop being
It's been flaky
flaky?
for a year and a half.
That is
Mm-hmm.
wild.
I mean, obviously, it's only been a week, so I can't guarantee that it's like gone, but like you can't see anything, and usually you would be able to.
No, it looks good.
Yeah. I mean, usually even the same day I wash it's under my fingernails, I got nothing. Nothing. But it was like people, places, things, and moments stuck in my mind as soon as I read it. And that is like the acceptance that you need. So if it's something that you
Wait, so what did you do to
no,
release
just
it? You just
realized that
acknowledged it?
that made sense. And then it was like, okay, that made sense.
And it just like your brain was like, made the connection, done. Like,
Done. And it made sense to me because and it wasn't anything I had been holding on to. This was like the final stage I needed to. And it's so weird. I wish I could tell this whole backstory, but that's for another episode because what's even weirder is after this release last week, I've literally thought about these people I've released that I had like not negative connotations or feelings for. They're all positive now. Like all the negative everything about people have just been like completely evaporated. When I think about people that I cut out of my life or didn't leave on good terms, I no longer have that like animosity or anger. It's just peace and, acceptance of the situation is what it is, and that's okay. I wish a beautiful life for everybody. That there's not a when I like go to look at things, I don't have any negative feelings towards any person, place, or thing. Like it's gone. That's why I stopped feeding into drama of, situations I've been in or places I've been a part of before where I could still feed into it, but I don't. Why would I do that? It doesn't matter.
Right.
It's just crazy
Dude,
circle
that's so
of,
crazy.
tying everything together. But the German New Age medicine is a thing. The guy understood that. That's literally what he did. And then he was like, you've got to cut it off. Here's why you've got to cut it off. That's the understanding of
Wow.
German New Age medicine to its core. How crazy is that?
That's so
I know.
crazy. Yeah. I love the tangents we went off
There's
on were
so
just
many.
all connected somehow.
I mean,
Just didn't share that because I was like, ah, no. But I was like, no, this is like a big deal. Like, I remember reading that and being like, what? And then also, he talks about getting sick is you can stop getting sick. He goes, anytime I feel like I'm getting sick, I think about, okay, how am I getting out of alignment? And I get back in alignment and I don't get sick. When he wrote the book in 2009, he goes, I have not had the flu or a cold in 13 or 14 years when he wrote that book.
stop.
He has mastered, yeah, mastered the ego and the battle of his mind so much so that he operates at such an optimum human level that he doesn't get sick. And he goes, also, time is slow to me now because I'm doing all the things that I want to do. It's about operating in your zone of excellence. It's a really
I've got
great
to read
book.
this.
But he's like, you really need to, because most people operate in their zone of genius where they're making good money, life is good, da 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 da. But there's something in the back of your mind telling you, hey, you should go write that book. Hey, you should go and do that. You should go and travel. You should go and do that. But you don't listen
Yeah,
to it because you're too fearful to. But the moment you take that step, starting this podcast, doing all the things that we're saying for ourselves, literally life just falls into place for you. You start hitting every green light. You never hit the train anymore. You're not sick anymore. Literally, life is operating at such an optimum level because you are doing exactly what you were supposed to do on this earth. And that's where I'm trying to
same,
get at. I've been in my zone of genius for so long. I'm entering into my zone of
same.
excellence where I'm not going to get sick anymore. Time is going to be as slow as I want it or as fast as I want it to be. Life operates on my
Yep.
terms. And that is where I'm trying to get at. And it's called The Big Leap. I haven't mentioned that. The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. It has changed my
Well, and
life.
I think with that, if we can adequately present the way to live that way, isn't that our entire goal here? It's the experiment. So it's like, okay, we challenge you guys listening to take, that's why we said, some of the stuff might not resonate with you, some of it might, but stay along for the ride because it could end up changing your entire life.
Over the next week, when you're sitting there and you're mindlessly scrolling and the thought comes across your mind, hey, you should get up and go on a walk. Listen to
Yeah.
it. Listen to that. Whenever you have a random thought come into your mind where it's separate from what you are doing, stop what you're doing and listen to it. And I'm curious to know what differences you see by operating in that zone of excellence of getting you into that point where you operate at top human
Well,
level.
and let us know too. We want to hear your success stories or your mindset shifts or, you know, what impact this is having on you. Reach out to us on Instagram at the MindShift Experiment and message us, comment, let us know. We are a brand new podcast, but we're wanting to use our platform to make a difference. And all the ways that we know how and we're passionate about it. And here's the thing, I know it will grow and evolve. And we know this is going to be so much bigger than we could ever dream of. Actually, probably not us, but we dream really big. But no, it's funny. We both had the conversation of we're both going into our zone of excellence. And it's crazy you say that because I actually worked with somebody recently who said that to me. She's like, you are now entering your highest version of your existence. You've entered into your highest timeline, your highest point of what you could be in this spiritual experience. And she it's crazy because she told me I almost didn't. I almost missed the mark. She said, "I don't know what happened to you recently, but you did this to your timelines and they freaking collapsed." She's like, "Things and experiences you were supposed to have in your late 30s, early 40s, you're going to go through this year because you've learned those lessons that would have taken you years, but some you listened to." I personally think it was the neighbor realization. I mean, for me, there were a lot of things that I realized at one time, and they came over me like this. And then everything lifted, and I felt like this blossoming flower with this ultimate peace in her peak. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just have to stay in alignment and I'll be okay. Like everything from here, when she told me what you're creating, you will look back on and be like, I made my fairy tale life happen. And what a concept. And what's so nice about being told that and being reassured that, because I knew that, but being told by somebody on the outside and being reassured that now, guess what? My mindset, the things I do every day, how I show up, who I am, will constantly stay in alignment with what I'm creating to create that. And that's what we're doing here.
So
It's so
beautiful.
beautiful.
Yeah,
Saying that,
it really is.
I cannot wait to see you guys next time for episode 3. We will be diving into, I'll edit that. So, for episode 3, we will be diving into the identity illusion and the entire illusion of who you are and who you aren't. And I can't wait for that. See you next time.
Can't wait.